Welcome to PERT Test Taking Strategies box method. You're going to use the box method whenever you have a polynomial multiplied by another polynomial. Most teachers use the method FOIL, and FOIL is great when you have two binomials because it tells you exactly to multiply the first terms and then the outside terms and then the inside terms and then the last terms. That's what FOIL stands for. But unfortunately, on the PERT test, you get more than just two binomials. Sometimes you'll have a monomial times a trinomial. And when it comes to this multiplication, the box method works every time, all the time. You're going to use the box method whenever you see the directions you want something in factored form, you want to factor it completely, and when you see the directions you want an equivalent expression. So let's get started. With the box method, you're going to use a box, such as this one, to help multiply polynomials of any size. So here we have an example of x plus 3 times x plus 2. You're going to first draw your box. Nothing's on the inside, just the outside of the box. Take your first polynomial and you can either write it down the side or across the top. It doesn't matter which way you do it because multiplication is associative and you can put them in any order. So we're going to go down the side with, we're going to go across the top with x plus 3. And when you have x and then the plus 3, wherever you see that plus sign, you're going to draw a line vertically going downwards to separate those two terms into two separate columns. Now we're going to take x plus 2 and put it along the side. Now, technically the plus sign or the minus sign will go with the second term, so you won't have that as a reference to draw your line, but just know that these two terms are separated by that plus sign, therefore a line needs to be drawn horizontally across the box. Now we have 4 little boxes on the inside, and that's where we're going to multiply. So we're going to take the terms x and the other x, so this x right here represents this side of the square, and this x represents this side, and you're basically finding the area. And we know the area of a box is length times width, or height times base, whichever way you want to look at it, and x times x is x squared. To get this box, we're going to multiply these two terms. See how x represents this whole entire row and 3 represents this column. So to get into this box, we use the x and the 3. X times 3 is 3x. To get into this box, we're going to use this column, so this x right here, and then we're going to look at this row, which is this 2. So 2 times x gives us 2x. To get this last box, it's this number, which is a positive 2, times a positive 3, and that gives us a positive 6. This is the box method. Once you fill in all the boxes, you then collect your terms. And we know x squared does not have a matching term, so he would be the first term in our polynomial. 3x and 2x can be combined, and that would give us 5x if I combined those two. And then the 6 is just a positive 6. We wouldn't have anything to combine with him. So our final answer for these two polynomials would be x squared plus 5x plus 6. All right, let's look at the other method. FOIL method works when you only have two binomials, like I was saying before. And that's when you multiply the first two terms together. So x is the first term in this parenthesis, and this x is the first term in the second parenthesis. You multiply those, and that would give you x squared. And then you multiply your outside terms, which would be x and 2. And x times 2 is a positive 2x. And then you multiply your inside terms, which would be 3 and then this x right here. That would give you 3x. And then your last terms would be the last terms in the parentheses, and 3 times 2 is 6. But like I said before, this only works with two binomials, so I would not suggest using this method. Let's get to an example. Example. Which of the following shows the factored form of 10x squared plus 17x plus 3? So when you see this question on the test, there are your two words, factored form. That should send off a light bulb, and make you think about the box method. So looking at my answers, I've got a binomial times a binomial. I've got a binomial squared, which just means that's that binomial twice. And 10x plus 3 times x plus 1, that's another binomial. And then the last one is also a binomial times a binomial. So I could use FOIL if I wanted to, but I'm going to stick with the box method. So the very first thing we do is actually just draw our box. And now I'm going to try letter A. So I'm going to take and I'm going to write 2x plus 1 on the top. And where I see that plus sign, I'm going to draw a line down. And then I'm going to take 5x plus 3 and write it on the side. And then I'm going to draw a horizontal line to represent the separation of those two terms. And then now I'm going to multiply to get into the boxes inside here. To get into this box, I need to multiply this term times 2x. And I know 5 times 2 is 10, and I know x times x is x squared. To get into this box, I need to multiply these two terms. So that would be 5x times 1, which is just 5 times 1, which we know is 5, and that's a positive 5. So I would put a positive 5 there, and then the x just tags along right with him. To get into this box down here, I'm going to need to multiply a positive 3 times a positive 2x. And I know positive 3 times 2 is a positive 6. And like I said before, that x, because it's multiplication, it just tags right along. For the last box, inside of here, I would multiply positive 3 and a positive 1. And I know positive 3 times a positive 1 is a positive answer, and that's positive 3. So now comes the point where we're going to check to see if our terms that are inside the boxes actually match our goal. Our goal is 10x squared plus 17x plus 3. So let's look at our first box. I've got a 10x squared. Does that match any of our terms up there? And it sure does. It matches the very first term, 10x squared. So we know this one checks out. It matches right there. The next one gets a little bit tricky, so we're going to come back to that 17x, and let's look at positive 3. Do I have a positive 3 down here? And of my 3 remaining boxes, I do. Here's my positive 3. So I know that that term checks out as well. I just need to figure out, do these two terms, when I combine them, do they equal a positive 17x? Well, let's look. If I take 5x and I add to it a 6x, well, I'm going to be adding my integers, and I know that those are both positive, so I'm going to actually add the numbers, and 5 plus 6 is 11, and that x comes right along with it, and the exponent does not change on that because we're adding. So does 11x match 17x? And unfortunately, it does not. So what that just showed you is that the very first answer choice of 2x plus 1 times 5x plus 3 does not actually work. So that is not an option. Let's go and try letter B. When we're trying letter B, we see that it's written as 5x plus 3 to the quantity 2. That's the same thing as 5x plus 3 times 5x plus 3. So we have our two binomials, and we can go ahead and create our box. On the top, you can put either 5x plus 3 or 5x plus 3. It really doesn't matter because it's the same term. And again, remember, it doesn't matter because you can write multiplication in any way. So with the plus sign on the top, I'm putting a line down, and I'm putting a line horizontally to separate those two terms. 5x times 5x is 25x squared. And once you put 25x squared in this box, a red flag should come up, because you know your first term should actually be 10x squared. And I have a 25x squared here, and I can tell that I am not going to get an x squared in any of the other boxes because this is the only box that has an x on either side of it. All the other ones, see this guy right here, he'll be multiplied by 3, so that would just be an x. And then in this box, I would have another 3 times 5x, which would be 15x. So I wouldn't get another x squared here as well. And that last box, if I'm looking at it, would be positive 3 times positive 3, which is positive 9. So even just looking at the first box and the last box, they don't match any of the terms. And that tells me that B is no longer an option as well. So I lost A and I lost B. Let's try letter C. 10x plus 3 times x plus 1. Let's go ahead and draw our box. On the top, I'm going to put 10x plus 3. Where I see that plus sign, I'm drawing a line straight down. And on the side, I'm going to put x plus 1. And I'm drawing that line straight over. All right, I have x times 10x, and that's going to give me 10x squared, which matches. I'm happy about that. And then I have x times 3. And if I do x times 3, that's going to give me 3x. And that's a positive 3x. And then I have 1 times 10x. If I do 1 times 10x, that is a positive 10x. And then the last box is a positive 1 times a positive 3. And that gives me a positive 3. So just at first glance, it looks great. I've got a 10x squared, and that matches up. I have a positive 3, and that matches up. So all I have to do is make sure that this middle set, this 10x and a positive 3x, matches a positive 17x. And when I'm looking at that and I go ahead and add it in my head, 10x plus 3x equals 13x. It does not equal 17x. So I just found out C is not the answer. So let's double check and make sure that D is the correct answer. So we're going to do 2x plus 3, draw our line, 5x plus 1, draw our line over, and the very first box is 2x times 5x, which is 10x squared, and then we're going to do 5x times 3, which is 15x, and that's a positive 15x. Inside this box, I'm going to have a positive 2x, and inside the last box, I have a positive 3. When I go and I combine my terms, I see that the first term again checks out, the positive 3 checks out because of these two boxes right here. All I have to do is combine this diagonal, and hopefully I get 17x. And I have 15x plus 2x, which does in fact equal 17x. So I now know that my answer is in fact D, and I can circle that and know positively I got that answer correct. Here is another problem that you can try on your own. It is factor the given expression completely. This is another set of directions that should trigger box method. But if that doesn't trigger it, look at your answers. You have a polynomial times a polynomial, and that should trigger box method. So I want you to go ahead and pause the video, try this problem, try each one of these, and see which one actually matches x squared minus 7x plus 10. So go ahead and pause that video and try it on your own, please. All right, hopefully you got that x minus 5 times x minus 2, which would have been a choice C, was the correct one. Look over the work that I have down here and in the boxes. If you did not get C, try to find your mistake. All right, let's try another one. So here we have a trinomial times a binomial. So our box is actually going to be a little bit bigger. You could either make a 3 by 2 box because this is a trinomial. You could write this on the side, or you could write this one on the side. I prefer to put the larger one on the top, but that's just me. So let's go ahead and create our box. It's going to be a bit longer. I'm going to go ahead and write my terms on top. I have d squared plus df plus f squared. And now everywhere I have that plus sign or a minus sign, I'm going to draw a line going vertically down. On the side, I'm going to put my binomial, which is d minus 2f. And then I draw that horizontal line to separate those terms. Now to multiply to get into this box, remember it's d times d squared. Even though you don't see it, there is a 1 here. And whenever we multiply two terms that have the same base, we're going to add the exponents. So 1 plus 2 is 3. So I know my exponent in this first one is going to be d cubed. To get to the second one, it's d times df. And I have a 1 right here, even though you don't see it. So that means 1 plus 1 is 2, so that's going to be d squared. And f doesn't have a common term in that one, so he just stays f to the first. Now d times f squared is going to be a positive df squared. Oh, let me put my positive sign here just so I remember it. And then down here for this row, I'm going to be multiplying each one of these terms times negative 2f. So negative 2f times d squared is going to give me negative 2, because negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. I keep my letters in alphabetical order. It makes it a little bit easier when we go to combine terms at the very end. And now for this next box, I have negative 2f times a positive df. So I have an f here, which is to the first power. Even though you don't see it, there is a 1 there. And I have a 1 here, even though you don't see it. So I have f to the first times f to the first. And just like before, I'm going to add my exponents. So that would give me negative 2. D stays just a d. And then that f becomes f squared. And then in the last box, I'm going to have negative 2f times f squared. So that would be negative 2f to the third power. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to collect my terms. When I go to collect my terms, I have to add the terms that look identical. So when I'm looking through here at this very first one, I have a d cubed. Do I have any other d cubes throughout the problem? And since I don't, I just go ahead and write that down, d cubed. Now I'm going to go, and I'm going to scratch him off just so I know that that box is no longer, I don't need to use him anymore. He's already represented down below. Now I'm going to go and look at my next box, which is d squared f, and that's a positive d squared f. So I'm looking for exactly d squared and f. That's just d. There's a d squared f, so those two boxes are the same. I'm going to circle them just so I know that they are like terms. And then continuing on, I have just a regular d and then f cubed. So these three boxes do not match those terms. So I'm going to go ahead and combine those. I have a positive d squared f minus 2d squared f. And when I combine my terms, I'm looking at the coefficients. So I would create a green box around these because I'm going to follow my green rules, and you know that from PERT Test Taking Strategies working with integers. I'm looking at my coefficients. I have a positive 1 here, even though you don't see it. Let me go ahead and write him in here. There is a 1 there. So I have a positive 1 plus or minus 2. So I have a positive 1 and a negative 2, and since I have different signs, I'm actually going to subtract them. 2 minus 1 is equal to 1, and that d squared f just comes right along with it. But it's going to be a negative 1 because that 2 is larger than 1. So when I go to write the terms together, I have d cubed, he was my very first one. Now I have minus d squared f. Keep going throughout the problem. I no longer have these two boxes. I look and I see that these two terms are the same, df squared and df squared up here, but again it's a positive 1 and a negative 2. So it's going to end up being exactly what I had before, except it's just minus df squared this time. And now I don't need those two boxes anymore. My last box is minus 2f cubed. And what I have to do is go through all of my answers, which I'm looking up here, and see which one matches my answer down here. And the first one is not going to match. He's just 2 terms, and I've got 4 terms down here. I definitely don't have a 3 anywhere in the problem, so I know that one's gone. And I'm looking, I don't have a 2, so that one's gone. So let's just make sure each one of these terms is represented down here. D cubed, that matches up. D squared, F, that's a negative, and I have a minus D squared F here. Minus DF squared, minus DF squared. And the last one is minus 2F cubed, minus 2F cubed. So it looks like C was my answer. All right, you guys go ahead and pause the video and try this problem on your own to see if you're able to do the box method. Okay, here's the answer. Hopefully you got letter choice D. D is what matched up with the problem after you did the box method for 3a plus 7b times a minus 4b. This one was a little bit trickier because it did have 2 variables, but if you were able to get D as your answer, you should feel great and proud of yourself. Let's try another one. So on this problem, we have the directions factor completely, and we have 25ab squared minus 15a plus 15. We're going to do a little bit of a strategy here. Looking at these 3 terms, I can see that my answers are a monomial times a trinomial. So this would have been, a long skinny box. If we were to create a box, it would have been something along about like that. And you would have had just a little old b on the side over here, and you would have wrote all the terms that are in the parentheses on the very top. But before we get to all of that, what I want to do is some strategy. Look to see what we would be multiplying. And we would be multiplying a b times every single one of these terms. Well, just look at the last term. B times 15 would have given us a positive 15b. And that last term here doesn't have a b in the actual term itself. So right off the bat, using some math sense, you guys can eliminate choice A. Looking at the rest of the choices, it looks like there's just a 5 in the front of each one of them, so it just has to match. When I multiply each one of these terms by 5, I get the correct terms up here. And right off, I'm looking at this. I've got 5 times 5, which is 25. And I do have ab squared, which is what I have right there, ab squared. 5 times a negative 3a. Well, 5 times negative 3 is negative 15, and that a is represented by that term. And then the last one would be positive 5 times a positive 3, which would give us a positive 15. So just using some math sense, I can see that B would be my answer in this problem. But you could always do the work to check to make sure that it is correct. If you did do the box method, then you would have seen in our first box we would have gotten 25ab squared, which matches our first term. The second term would have been negative 15a, and that matches our second term as well. And the last box would have been positive 15. So there's the math work to support the math sense. Here is one more problem. You can try using math sense on this one, or you can try using the box method. But go ahead and pause the video and try this problem on your own and see how you do. All right, here's the answer. Hopefully you were able to drill down through each of the multiple choice answers and find out that C was actually the correct answer the whole entire time. So thanks guys so much for watching this video. Hopefully you learned a thing or two about taking that PERT test, and I hope you have a nice day.